Let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Right now, the 49ers are 6-8 on the season, and it seems like they're going to miss the NFL playoffs, and their season is completely over. This has been a bad season all around. It was a bad offseason because Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, he got shot in his chest. I'm glad that he's okay. Christian McCaffrey has missed majority of this season. For the first half of this season, this man was out dealing with Achilles tendonitis in both legs. Then when he went against the Buffalo Bills in a snow game, he hurt his PCL. Then you look at Jordan Mason. He went on IR. He got injured in the same matchup. Isaac Guerrero had to come into the game. This was just a snake bend season, and it happens to the best of them. Sometimes teams just go out there, they just deal with injuries, and they can't overcome all the injuries. But Kyle Shanahan does deserve some blame here. And I'm going to talk about Deebo Samuel first, because when you look at the contract situation, they have a lot of contracts to move off of, because that quarterback, Brock Purdy, he's up for a major contract extension. A guy that helped you go to the NFC Championship his rookie season, and he helped you go to the Super Bowl last season. That's not going to be a cheap contract. And have you seen the quarterback market lately? I want to start off with Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is not the same player that he once was. I may say something very controversial here. I think Deebo Samuel right now is one of the weakest wide receivers with the San Francisco 49ers. You have Ricky Pearsall. It's the reason why you drafted him in the first round. Now, we knew at the time someone had to go, either Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. They gave Brandon Ayuk that contract extension. Unfortunately, he tears his ACL. He basically blows out his knee against the Kansas City Chiefs. But they saw Brandon Ayuk as the number one wide receiver on this roster, and rightfully so. Brandon Ayuk had a monster season last season. He is a better wide receiver than Deebo Samuel. He's a better route runner. He has better hands. Overall, he's just a better wide receiver. He's a more consistent deep threat. Deebo Samuel has been seen as a guy that can break tackles in space, good with yards after catch, good with run after catch. He's basically a running back when you put the football in his hands. That's why they had him at the running back position in the NFL playoffs until they made a trade to bring in Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. And they will still put Deebo Samuel in the backfield. But when I look at Deebo Samuel, it has been a constant decline with his numbers. Deebo Samuel is not the same player that he once was. Deebo Samuel, if you want to be real, he only had one good elite season, and that was in 2021. He had 1,405 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns on 77 receptions. Since then, it's been a huge decline. In 2022, I understand he dealt with injuries, 56 receptions, 632 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. In 2023, he did have 892 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns. But you look at this season right here, 553 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And he came out on X, on Twitter, whichever you want to call it, and was saying, hey, just give me the football. I'm the same player. You're not. Now, I'm not going to make too many jokes about Deebo Samuel because the situation with the San Francisco 49ers with a couple of players, it's not good. But when I look at Deebo Samuel, his attitude by grabbing the kicker's face mask when he was missing kicks against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I understand frustration. Now, would it be wrong in today's game after the Rams because he had 2 crucial drops for the kicker to get in Deebo Samuel's face and rip him by his face mask? Deebo Samuel has not been a good teammate this season. Let's just call it for what it is. He's an immature player, and they need to move off of him. Deebo Samuel's always preaching, just give me the football. I'm an elite player. You're not. You're not better than George Kittle. You're not better than Ricky Pearsall right now. You're not better than Christian McCaffrey. You're not better than Brandon Ayuk. They need to move off of this contract. And I doubt that another team will go out there and give him a big money contract. No one's going to go out there and trade for Deebo Samuel. So they're going to release Deebo Samuel after this season and will save them a lot of money moving forward. And one of the receivers had to go when they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. Fortunately for the 49ers, they made the decision early on. They made the decision to go out there and pay Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel, you can move off this contract. But you just can't go out there and get mad at your kicker, and then when you don't show up, you blame everyone else except for yourself. That's the problem that I have with a lot of wide receivers in today's game. And that has been the case for many decades now, but especially with these wide receivers, they hop on social media, free the player go in there and say, free my number. Free this player, free Jordan Addison. They'll say something like that. And then the next week, they don't step up. Now, for Jordan Addison and the Vikings, he has stepped up over the last few weeks. But every time a player would get on social media, you don't perform the next week, I think it's best for you to put the phone down and get back in the gym and work on your catching. And I understand it was a rainy game today. And for the ones that want to stick up for Deebo Samuel, I have the numbers right here. In today's game against the Rams, I understand that it was a rainy game. They gave him 7 targets. He only caught the ball 3 times. Against the Chicago Bears, they put up 38 points in that matchup. Deebo Samuel only had 2 catches for 22 receiving yards. And they were trying to get him involved early. He just couldn't beat man coverage. Just like in the Super Bowl, he couldn't beat man coverage. He was getting locked up the entire day by L'Jarius Sneed and also Trent McDuffie. They were taking turns on locking him up. And the only guy that could get open on a consistent basis outside of George Kittle was Brandon Ayuk. That was it. That's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. Good riddance to Deebo Samuel. But when I look at the rest of the offense, just a bunch of injuries. Like I mentioned before, Brandon Ayuk has missed majority of this season dealing with an ACL injury. He was basically giving the 49ers all type of hell behind the scenes. The same thing that Nick Bosa did when he wanted the contract extension. They threatened trades. They want to go somewhere else. Then the team go out there. Then they pay him. The problem with Brandon Ayuk, he did not look like the same player this season as the season progressed when he was fully healthy because he missed so much of training camp because he was holding out with a contract. This is why you should hire better agents, or this is why you should take care of that so you can go out there and work in training camp and work into OTAs. They don't just have these scheduled workouts for no reason. It's a long off season. So right before the season starts, it's best to go out there and work out. It's hard to just try to come in and just catch the football when you're just running on the treadmill in the gym and doing your own thing. It's different when you're working out by yourself other than working out with your teammates. Brandon Ayuk did not look good this season before he got injured with that ACL injury. He had 2 drop passes against the New York Jets in week 1, and 2 of those passes could have went for touchdowns. He has to step up next season. And I am worried about him coming off a torn ACL. George Kittle has dealt with injuries in the past, but he's still one of the best tight ends in the NFL. You're going to keep him around. I'm concerned with Christian McCaffrey. This is a man that has dealt with injuries in the past with the Carolina Panthers. That's why they traded him to the San Francisco 49ers. And for the first couple of years, it was great. Christian McCaffrey was able to stay on the field. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. In my opinion, he's the best do-it-all running back in the NFL. He can catch the football at the backfield. He can run in between the tackles. The problem that I have with him and Kyle Shanahan, uses his kid too much. You have other running backs in this roster that could take the load off of Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey missed majority of this season dealing with Achilles tendonitis in both legs. And now this man hurt his PCL against the Buffalo Bills. As soon as he came back into the game, you're giving him over 20 carries. Chill out on that. You have Jordan Mason, and you say that he's a fumble machine. You put in Isaac Guerrero. This is not a hard offense for running backs to succeed in. This is similar to the Mike Shanahan system many decades ago. Yes, Christian McCaffrey is a special threat, especially in the red zone situation. So just use him primarily as a red zone target early on when he's coming off the Achilles tendonitis injury. But instead, you gave him too many carries. He was not ready to go out there and be the bell cow running back just yet. You had him, you had Jordan Mason, and you also had Isaac Guerrero. And you still cannot find a way to score the football into the red zone. Kyle Shanahan coaching has been very predictable this season. And it was not good in the red zone. We saw that early on throughout the entire season. And we saw it today against the Los Angeles Rams. Granted, it was a rainy game. But against elite level competition, their red zone offense has been atrocious. That's why they split with the Seattle Seahawks this season. That's why they got swept by the Los Angeles Rams this year. I'm going to give Kyle Shanahan a lot of grace because of the injuries that he has had to deal with as a coach. But also his coaching has not been good. 2 things can be true. And when I look at Kyle Shanahan, he can't win the big game. And a lot of coaches can't win the big game. But him in particular, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, they blew that 28-3 lead. It wasn't all on him because Dan Quinn was the head coach. But Kyle Shanahan's play calling was not good in the second half of that game. You had the Kansas City Chiefs down not once but twice in those Super Bowl outings because they didn't only just face the Kansas City Chiefs once. They faced them when they had Jimmy Garoppolo, and they lost that football game. A couple years later, now you have Brock Purdy. You still were not able to win the game. You got outcoached by Andy Reid. And you got outcoached by Andy Reid yet again this season. Because the Kansas City Chiefs went out there and they took care of business in the best way possible by running man coverage. Kyle Shanahan can't find a way to go out there and scheme guys open against man coverage. I understand the players, they're having a tough time right now. But at the same time, Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. You expect more out of him. But for him to be 0-3 in Super Bowls, that's not a good look. And I'm not going to come on here and say, hey, Kyle Shanahan is taking this team all the way to the Super Bowl every single year. They don't have that much talent. No, this is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. He has just come up short year after year, and the excuses have to stop. You look at what Sean McVay's been able to do. He's won a Super Bowl, and you can say, hey, he has Matthew Stafford. Let's not play that game. Kyle Shanahan got to pick his quarterback before they selected Brock Purdy. Look at who they had on their roster. You had Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, you traded for him. But let's not forget that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan moved all the way up in the NFL draft, and they moved up for a bust in Trey Lance, who was not ready to play in the NFL. Ownership did not do that. Kyle Shanahan did. And that has been confirmed by many sources. He moved up for a quarterback that was not ready to play in the NFL. And if Brock Purdy was not this good, they would have fired Kyle Shanahan a long time ago. And this is coming from a Kyle Shanahan fan. And I love me some Mike Shanahan back in the day also. But I'm truthful enough to say this. If Brock Purdy didn't work out, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan would have both been fired. Because who else is going to come in and be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers? But they lucked into Brock Purdy. And now you're in this situation to where you have to pay Brock Purdy long term. Now, personally, for me, this is where we get into a bit of a hostile debate depending on what side of the fence you sit on. Some people believe that Brock Purdy is just a system quarterback. In my opinion, Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. For one, Jimmy Garoppolo never looked this good with the 49ers. And I understand they made the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. They went to the NFC Championship. Jimmy Garoppolo is a definition of a system player. Trey Lance never worked out. He wasn't good, and he played with similar weapons. I look at Brock Purdy. Yes, he does have Christian McCaffrey. He has Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk. But with some of the throws that Brock Purdy's able to make, he looks like a franchise quarterback. It's the little things that he can do. When I look at Brock Purdy, you have to pay him long term. And I look at this offensive line, it's best to go into this NFL draft cycle, and it's best to go through free agency and bring in some better offensive linemen. Because I look at Big Trent Williams, he's starting to deal with injuries. And anytime he's out of the starting lineup, your offense isn't the same because he's one of the best players in the NFL. You can still keep him around. You can run him back with the same roster, but just keep in mind these players are getting older and they're dealing with more injuries. And as you get older, injuries don't become easier to recover from. They become harder to recover from. And look at the situation with Christian McCaffrey, and look at the situation now with Big Trent Williams. And when you talk about things that went on off the field with the Ricky Pearsall situation, I'm happy that he's okay. He got shot in his chest over a young punk trying to rob him. We talked about Javarius Ward. He's missed time this season. He had the death in the family of his 1-year-old daughter. My prayers are with him and his family. Trent Williams went through something very similar just a couple of weeks ago. Just a bunch of bad things off the field with those specific players, and I wish them nothing but the best. And I'm happy that Javarius Ward did take time away from the team because that's something way bigger than football. And Trent Williams, he still went out there and he still played. Shout out to that man for being a soldier. And he was still trying to play even though he's dealing with an injury right now. Those guys really care about the team. Even when they take a step away, they're still a part of the team. And shout out to the San Francisco 49ers organization for taking care of those players through those tough moments. I'll never come on here and say that the San Francisco 49ers are a terrible organization. They have taken care of players, even when they're dealing with injuries or even when they're definitely dealing with a death in the family. So shout out to the York family for doing that. Jed York, who is the owner, Kyle Shanahan, the coach, and obviously John Lynch, they all came together and supported those players even when they were at their worst. So you'll never hear me say a bad thing about those guys behind the scenes. They're trying to go out there and help out the players in the best way possible. That's why I get very animated when someone like Deebo Samuel acts out on the sideline. It comes out on Twitter and basically you're calling out your head coach to get you the football when all Kyle Shanahan has done is vouch for you and get you the football, and you've let him down year after year since you had that one big season. And when you look at the defense, Devondre Campbell, they should have cut him a long time ago. He was terrible on the field. For the ones that don't understand what's going on in this situation, he did not want to check into the game. Dre Greenlaw was finally able to play today against the Los Angeles Rams. This was his first game back recovering from the torn Achilles that he suffered in the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, this team has been through hell with injuries, but they signed Devondre Campbell in the offseason after the Green Bay Packers let him go. Now we see why the Packers did let him go. He's a washed-up linebacker. He did not want to check back into the game. They essentially benched him in favor of Dre Greenlaw. I don't know what Devondre Campbell thought was going to happen. You're not Bobby Wagner. You're not Fred Warner. You're not a TJ Watt type of player. So why did you think that you're going to still be the starter when Dre Greenlaw has been the starter for his entire career with the 49ers? He knows the system. He knows the players, and he has a close relationship with Fred Warner. When I look at Devondre Campbell, you're terrible in coverage. You can't tackle, and you're slow when it comes to sideline speed and tackling. Move off of Devondre Campbell for the rest of this season. He exited the game because he did not want to check back in because he didn't want to play. That's soft. That's what that is. And I don't call too many NFL players soft, but that's a soft move right there. They need to move off of Devondre Campbell. But shout out to Dre Greenlaw. I think him and Fred Warner, when they're fully healthy, they're one of the best linebacking duos in the entire NFL. They can go out there and they can get some things done for you into the right situations. But this defense, they need an overhaul. They have not had a good, consistent defense since DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans was their last great defensive coordinator, and now he's the head coach with the Houston Texans. He's not coming back anytime soon. You moved off to Steve Wilks last season. Steve Wilks was not terrible, but he was not a great defensive coordinator either. This is a 49ers organization. They love to play through their front seven, more so through their secondary. Steve Wilks is more so of a coach that likes to coach through his secondary. When you look at Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans, they're more so linebacker and defensive lineman coaches. And it brings up this conversation. Robert Saleh got fired by the New York Jets. There could be a possible return there between him and also with Robert Saleh, between Robert Saleh and the San Francisco 49ers. The last time Shanahan and Robert Saleh was on the same coaching staff, they went to the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, and their defense looked very good. They had one of the best defenses in the NFL. Say what you want to say about Saleh as a head coach. He did get done dirty by the New York Jets, but he's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. Look at the Jets defense with and without him. You bring him back to the San Francisco 49ers, he will be a great defensive coordinator. And him and Kyle Shanahan are still close friends. I think that he can come in. He will help out Nick Bosa yet again. Nick Bosa has dealt with injuries, but he's still a star pass rusher. You now have Leonard Floyd, Javon Hargrave. I don't know if Javon Hargrave is going to be back next season or not, because he's on IR right now dealing with an injury. And the same with Drake Jackson. I know that Drake Jackson has a great chance of being back next season. He's only 23 years old. He's a very good defensive end to have around, especially against the pass. Against the pass, he can go back there and push the pocket. He's more so of one of those guys you look at. He's a third down pass rusher, but he's a very good pass rusher, and he can stop the run in certain situations. Fred Warner, very good player. Dre Greenlaw, you guys know how I feel about him. Javarius Ward is one of the better cornerbacks to have in the NFL. You have Renardo Green and Lenore. So you have three very good cornerbacks, and you have Hufanga, who has missed a lot of time the last 2 years. Last season, he tore his ACL, but before he tore his ACL, he was a top safety in the NFL. This season, he's dealt with a lot of injuries. He's been banged up. You give him a full offseason to fully recover. I think that he will be okay. But this is a 49ers team. You could say go out there and blow everything up and completely rebuild. I wouldn't go in that situation. You still have Brandon Ayuk, who you paid a lot of money. George Kittle, he's not going anywhere. You can fix this offensive line. I've seen Kyle Shanahan do this in the past by going out there and bringing in the right offensive lineman. I thought they should have did that this offseason, because their offensive line is part of the reason to why they lost the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. Brock Purdy did not have enough time in the pocket against Chris Jones, and he was still trying to step up into throws and just trying to get the football out quicker. You need to work on the interior of this offensive line, come up with a replacement for Trent Williams, which is way easier said than done. Move off of Deebo Samuel, move off of Devondre Campbell, and possibly move off some more defensive players. But bring back someone like a Robert Saleh and bring in a brand new defensive mind. The problem is this. Kyle Shanahan has moved off a lot of defensive coordinators in the past. You can make that argument, but at the same time, that's not his fault. Robert Saleh left to become the head coach with the Jets. DeMeco Ryans left to become the head coach with the Houston Texans. You bring in Steve Wilks. It didn't work out. You did go to the Super Bowl. Some people thought that they did Steve Wilks dirty. I don't really believe so. Even though they went to the Super Bowl, it was just an awkward fit. They should have never hired him in the first place. That was just an awkward fit for Steve Wilks, who I do believe still has a very good defensive mind, and he deserves to be in the NFL, at least as a defensive consultant, in my humble opinion. Now you look at the defensive coordinator that they have right now, the defense is still not the same. The 49ers need to evaluate everything. Don't fire Kyle Shanahan. Don't go out there and trade Brock Purdy, trade Christian McCaffrey. All of the clickbait stuff is not needed. Sometimes you go through injuries and you bounce back in a better way. And I'm going to also say this. I rarely say this for teams that just went to the Super Bowl and lost the Super Bowl. This is a definition of a Super Bowl hangover. They have dealt with so many things off the field that's just been bad luck with death in the family and getting shot and just with random injuries. And you also just look at it from this point. They've played a lot of football over the last few years. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan can deliver the San Francisco 49ers a Super Bowl, but right now he is the best coach that they can have at this current moment. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the San Francisco 49ers and what should they do moving forward? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.